All right, we're here live on YouTube for our Calligraphy School new member onboarding.
Yay. Hi, everyone. Should
So,
we um, introduce ourselves?
sure, before we do that, let me just say if you're watching the replay, thanks for watching. And if you have any questions that we can help answer that weren't answered on this live video, you can always post in the Calligraphy School community and we'd be happy to help. So yes, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. And if anyone is here watching live, please feel free to leave a comment so that we know that you're here.
Yeah. So some of you may not have seen our faces before or talked with us before. So welcome. I'm Jillian and this is Jordan. We are twin sisters. And let's see, what would you like to know about us? So we started doing calligraphy. We took a calligraphy class when we were 11 years old, so a while ago. And we loved it. We always were into like hand lettering and crafting and all that kind of stuff. But then about, let's see, 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, when we graduated from college, we went off to our separate full-time jobs. We had very data-heavy jobs. Jordan was in engineering, I was data analytics, but we were still kind of doing like some creative hobbies on the side just to kind of fuel that creativity. So I got engaged and I got back into calligraphy to do my wedding invitations. So actually it was, wait, what year is it?
Oh
It was
yeah.
it was March 20th. So like next week it'll be 10 years since I
Oh
got
my
engaged. Yeah.
gosh.
And that's like when I decided that I wanted to get back into calligraphy because from my childhood experience of calligraphy so that I could do my wedding calligraphy. So anyway, that was 10 years ago. Oh my gosh. And I kind of tried to remember it on my own, relearn it, and eventually took a calligraphy class and then started sharing my calligraphy with Jordan over FaceTime since we were living in different cities. And that's kind of how our entry point back into calligraphy. I would love to know for some of you who are, by the way, I can't see the comments right now, but if anyone's here live, let us know like what your initial entry point into calligraphy was. It could
Yes,
be
I can
calligraphy school.
see
Yeah.
that Joanne is here and Charla and Nicholas. Thank you guys for being here and for commenting so that we know that our video is working. But yeah, like Jillian said, if you want to share what your first entry point into calligraphy was, whether you've done it before, maybe you did it as a kid, or if this is your first time with us in calligraphy school, we'd love to know.
Yeah. And now that we have kids, I have my oldest is in kindergarten. She's turning 6 in a couple months. I have 4 kids, and Jordan has 2 kids, and we are starting to see them get interested in like handwriting and penmanship. So it'll be fun to see if they kind of follow in our calligraphy footsteps or not. But I'd love to know if anyone here has kids who are into this kind of stuff, because I feel like that's getting more and more rare. Um,
Yeah, and like a lot of you here watching, you probably learned cursive in school. I know we learned cursive in second grade.
yeah.
And cursive is like a good lead in point to calligraphy just because it's different than regular print handwriting. Um, and yeah, my 4 year old, almost 4.5 year old, she loves writing. She's just learning how to write and starting to read. And she can tell the difference between regular writing and calligraphy. And she always likes to, I've written letters for her that she traces, and she actually does. I'm always really impressed at how well she can trace the calligraphy.
I don't
Uh,
think I told you this, but I wrote something for my 4-year-old in calligraphy, and she was like, "No, I want you to write it in English."
that's funny.
Like she thinks it's a different language, which it kind of is.
That's funny. Um, so continuing on the story, so after Jillian started relearning calligraphy, again, this was about 10 years ago, we would FaceTime each other because at the time she was living in Nashville and I was living in Cleveland. And I'm not sure if you said this at the beginning, but we're from Ohio. We both now live in Ohio, but we're from Cleveland. And we would teach each other over FaceTime. And we had an Instagram account that we started posting and following other people. Um, and then people started asking us, so we would just like share on our own social media a picture of some calligraphy that we had done, like a card that we've created. And then people that we knew started asking us like, hey, how are you doing that? Can you teach me? And so I remember recording my very first YouTube video teaching. It was actually one of our teachers that reached out to us asking how to do calligraphy. So we recorded a video, put it on YouTube, not really expecting it to do anything besides like, here's the video. And then a lot of people started watching it. And then a lot of people started asking us more about how to learn. And then in 2017, we started teaching in-person workshops in Ohio, also in Tennessee. And then people on Instagram that were following us that did not live in Ohio asked us to like how they could learn. And so we started teaching online courses and we had online workbooks. And 2017, 2018, 2019, all during all those years, we were learning calligraphy ourselves, learning new, more advanced styles and techniques. So we started with the basics with just brush pen calligraphy. We also did some pointed pen calligraphy. Then we started developing our own styles and our own teaching methods because we would start experimenting with flourishing, for example, and our students would ask us like how to do it. So I like the quote, to teach is to learn. So we started coming up with our own teaching methods to explain like, how am I flourishing? And that turned into this whole method, which then turned into a whole entire online course. And so we created online courses for all these different topics. And let me just look at the comments really quick. So Charlotte said, this is my first experience with calligraphy at nearly 64. I homeschooled and subbed as an elementary school teacher. That's awesome. There are actually a lot of teachers in our group here.
Yeah,
And
there
then,
are.
yeah, Joanne said, I love pens and using them. Calligraphy is pretty. And Charlotte said, my grandson calls cursive writing curly writing.
That's funny. It is curly and it sounds kind of like cursive.
Yeah.
Curly.
So then, yeah, basically ever since 2017, we've been doing calligraphy, learning different styles, and then teaching it as we've gone along. And then last year, we opened up Calligraphy School as a way for people to get into calligraphy, just to do it kind of for fun and have an easy, fun, relaxing hobby, almost like a coloring book. Like instead of our online courses were very detailed, very in depth. It would be like a 6-week boot camp where you would learn every little detail of calligraphy, which was great because our students became really good at it. But then we also realized that some people don't have like hours to practice every day or really just kind of want to do it for fun. So that's how we developed Calligraphy School. And so far, everyone has been loving it with the fun, easy worksheets that you can trace and just kind of do calligraphy and not worry so much about like learning it. Also, I do want to say if you have been in calligraphy school for several months and you're like wondering what's next, we do have other courses. You're welcome to send us a message. And like if you need help figuring out what to do next, we're happy to help you. Or you can just keep enjoying. We release new worksheets every month. We just released a St. Patrick's Day workbook. We have a fun one coming for April. We also have one planned for May that you guys are going to really like. So actually, why don't we go ahead and show inside the classroom, because again, this is our new member onboarding. So I want to make sure that no one has any questions about where to find anything. So I'm going to share my screen now.
And in case you didn't say this already, if anyone has questions about where to find things, first of all, Jordan's probably going to answer that right now, but use the chat to put your questions in if you're here watching live so that we make sure that while we're here with you, we get those answered.
Okay, sorry, one second. Let me just make sure I'm sharing my screen. Okay, is this showing up okay?
Yes.
Okay, so when you log in to Calligraphy School, if you go to school.com/calligraphy, this is what you're going to see. This is the community tab. So if you scroll down, you're going to be seeing all of the posts of what everyone is sharing, whether it's sharing their own calligraphy or asking a question or sharing their work on one of the worksheets that we've posted. So in the community tab, you kind of just like see what's going on, but it's not really that organized because it's like kind of real time people commenting on things. If you want to find the worksheets, then you would want to go to the classroom. And while we're here, if anyone has any question about where to find anything, again, just please don't hesitate to ask. So again, the community tab, also, I just want to say we have pinned posts at the top. So this one right here, if you open it, it will show you what order to go through everything. So you can refer back to that, but I'm just going to show you right now. So if you go to the Classroom tab, this is where you will find the courses, and they are in order of what order we recommend going through them. So the first one is the Quick Start course, and you can access the lessons over here on the menu and watch the video and download the workbook. We're actually going to be going through this worksheet packet after this quick classroom tour today. So as you go through the lessons, if you want, you can check this little green check mark. It'll turn green after you check it, and that will help mark your progress. And you can just go through the lessons like this. Sometimes you'll see something that says go to next lesson down here. That will just take you to the next one. If you're on your phone, then it will look a little bit different. So if you're on the app, or if you're just accessing it on your phone, some people have found that it's actually easier to do it on a computer. So I just wanted to mention that just in case. It's a little bit easier to see things. Okay, so after you go through, oh, and also there are pinned posts at the bottom of each lesson for most of the lessons. So at the top, there's usually a video you can watch. They're pretty short. There is the worksheet packet that you can download. And if you click on the link, it will open it up. And then to download it, you see this little arrow up in the top right corner. That's how you can download it and save it to your computer. And then you can print it from there. And then under that, you have a post if you would like to share your work. Then you can do that here. I'm going to go jump to the bottom. And if you want to post a picture, if you click on this little paperclip icon, it will allow you to open up a file that you can attach. Okay, and then after you go through the Quick Start course, then the next course in here is Practice Words and Compositions. We also call it Step 2 Traceable Worksheets. Sometimes, just so you know, we change up the titles of these things in here based on feedback, so it might not look exactly the same a few months from now. But in this section, this is where you are going to find all of the practice words and compositions and workbooks for you to print and trace. So the first lesson up here at the top is just like a master list of all of the resources that we have in here. We add new ones every month. And then if you see, okay, so these are organized into folders and it says click to expand. So if you click on it, then it'll open up the practice words. So for example, in March, we added the March worksheet. Again, same format where it has a video at the top, the worksheets that you can download, and then the pinned posts in the community where you can share your work. And just so that there's no confusion, the posts here are also in the community tab, but in the community, it's just kind of like a feed in order, like imagine your Facebook feed. In here, the same posts are pinned in the right spot that correspond to the course. So I just want to mention that. So our St. Patrick's Day workbook we just released is in here.
And just a little fun fact, all of the worksheets and workbooks and everything, like the Quick Start course that we're going to go through is things that we used a brush pen on paper and wrote it out and then scanned it in and added arrows. There might be like a couple exceptions where that wasn't the case, but for like 99% of the worksheets, it's our handwritten calligraphy scanned in so that you can kind of see like a real view of what it should look like when you're tracing it. And then by tracing it, you can sort of be enjoying doing calligraphy, but also kind of learning what the letters can look like. And the videos, I don't know if you're about to say the videos also show trace. Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I have this video playing. This is in the Quick Start course if you are interested. So you can see we wrote it, scanned it in, and then this part is happening on the iPad just to edit out any mistakes and move things around, make things centered, and then, so this is a very manual process. I timed it once. It took like 90 minutes to make one worksheet.
Yeah.
Just with the writing it out and then hand drawing in these arrows. So that we do this on the iPad to digitally add the arrows and the numbers so that when we upload it for you, it's all ready to go. Okay, so this video, if you want to watch it again, is in the Quick Start course. So then so basically the Quick Start course teaches you how to use the brush pen, how to use the worksheets. And then in here, this is like your your worksheet library where you can go through these and print them and practice them. I don't want you to think though, like if you just joined calligraphy school in March or February, I don't want you to feel like you have to go back and catch up on like October, November, December, January before, like you can just jump right in where you are. This is not meant to be overwhelming. In fact, this is meant to be for people who don't have a lot of time. So even if all you did this month was go to the March words, download the March worksheet, and then trace it a few times, that would absolutely be okay. Oh, hi, Carrie. So Carrie said, it took me a moment to figure out how to do comments. I'm 71, still a crafter, always wanted to learn calligraphy. You're never too old to learn. I agree. Yeah, and the comments are kind of optional too. This is just like we have the community here. So some people love interacting with the community and love sharing their work and love encouraging others, but it also is kind of optional. Like you don't have to participate in the community.
Yes,
It is
you
kind of,
have like you have permission not to
mhm.
comment. If you want to just like I'm in a hand embroidery group where I don't comment at all. I don't really participate socially, but I still am in the group to just see what's going on and see what questions are being asked. So don't feel like we're like expecting you to comment
Yeah,
on things or wondering why you aren't if
yeah.
that's not something you're interested in.
But it is nice to have like if you do have a question, you have the opportunity to ask it in the group. Okay, so all these resources are in here for you. So you can just pick one, print it, practice it. And then if you go back, so I keep going back to the classroom by clicking on the classroom tab. If you want to go into a little bit more detail, like beyond a little bit beyond just tracing, we just added this course that has a little bit more information and details about things like the basic strokes and warm-ups and how to hold a pen, tips for lefties, why to lift your pen, a little bit more of a tutorial about how to do bounce lettering, and then some other resources in here for you about tools and styles. And then well, oh, someone just commented. Charlotte said, I doodle and color on my iPad while watching TV. I join to enhance my journaling. Yeah, so iPad lettering is lots of fun. And these worksheets actually can be imported into your iPad. I'm going to show you that in 1 second. But so after you go through these courses, we also have a course here that has alphabet styles for you to try. So the modern alphabet is what these worksheets are based off of, but we also have a traditional alphabet in here for you. If you like more of that traditional style, you can try that out. And then we have recordings of workshops. So last month we did a workshop about practice tips. In February, we did a Valentine workshop. And then we're also uploading the recording. So the recording of the video we're doing right now is going to be in here. And then we also have this frequently asked questions course where we add to it when there's a frequently asked question. So the first lesson in here is about how to use the worksheets on your iPad. And then there's some other tips. A lot of these are actually community posts where people ask a question and then like you can see this one has 200 comments on it. We also try to give our quick recommendations up here at the top. So for more brush pens. Okay, so does anyone have any questions about where to find anything in the classroom? Um, we also have this calendar tab, which when we add an event, we will add it to the calendar. We actually just started using the calendar tab this month, so the only event on it is what's happening right now today. Oh, I also did want to mention there's a tab here that's called leaderboards, and this is something that's automatically tracked by the website that we use. So we use the website school.com. It's kind of like facebook.com, but school.com, where you can create your own group. And it automatically tracks if you like participate in the community. But again, this is totally optional. This is something that is just like going on in the background, and it tracks your points and your levels. Your level has nothing to do with your actual skill level. It has nothing to do with the number of courses you've gone through. It's just based on your engagement. So if you want, you can just ignore that. Okay, so it seems like there aren't any questions about finding anything. So let's get into the lesson here. And I'm going to go to my camera.
Yeah, well, while you are getting set up, Some people might find it useful to bookmark those pages that Jordan was showing you, like the school.com/calligraphy. If you click on the classroom, you can bookmark that to your like browser window so that you can always really easily find it. That's just something that might be useful. Okay, I'm
Okay.
going to hide myself while you do this.
Okay. So there are a couple questions coming in that I also want to make sure that anyone here that is watching, I want you to have your questions answered. So, is there a tutorial on joining letters? So in calligraphy school, we don't have a specific tutorial about joining letters, and I think the best way to learn is just by doing and by doing a lot of tracing. But actually, here on this first page of the um, packet here, this kind of helps explain a little bit about how to join the letters. Actually, there's a better example here. No, wait. I thought there was one where oh, maybe I just added notes to it. Anyway, the way that you want to think about joining letters is just by writing each letter individually, and then letters are written separately even though they look connected. So you'd want to finish the H, and then when you start the E, if you just imagine pushing these together, let's zoom in here. If you imagine pushing these together, then that's how you can see how they're connected. This is not like cursive. Um, in cursive, you go really quickly. Like the purpose of cursive is to write fast. The purpose of calligraphy is to write beautifully. So we are actually going to be lifting our pen a lot in calligraphy. So really the letters are not like fluidly connected. Each one is very distinct. And that's why in the worksheets, when we have the numbers and arrows, there are so many numbers and arrows because each one shows you where to lift your pen. So in the letter D or in the letter R, you're starting here, you're lifting twice. And then when you get to the E, you're lifting again. That will make more sense in a minute when we get to that part. Also, I do want to say, if you are the type of person that wants to go into more detail, we do have other courses that go into like extreme detail about things like letter connections, where we have this like whole matrix where we break down the letters into their individual parts and show how to basically do any combination of letters. That's just a little bit too much for calligraphy school. But if you are interested in that, we can point you towards another resource. And let me make sure. Okay, so how do you study your hand? And I'm a lefty too. I can do my best to show some lefty tips when we get to the part about how to hold a pen. And then for studying your hand, this is, I know this isn't probably what you want to hear, but it is normal to be shaky at first when you're doing calligraphy because, especially if you don't spend a lot of time writing, then your hand muscles are probably not trained to be writing or not like strengthened to be writing in this way. It's kind of like lifting weights at the gym. Like if you don't lift weights, then the first few times you do it, you're not going to feel like that muscle memory kick in. So muscle memory is a huge part of it, and that's actually another reason why we created Calligraphy School, so that you can trace and trace a lot and trace a lot of times just to like naturally build up that muscle memory. It
Yes,
takes practice, yeah.
I don't know if you already said this. For when you anyone who's new, if you haven't actually gotten to the worksheets yet, you'll notice that we have the same quote written like with numbers and arrows, and then we have it on the next page. And the point is to get you tracing again and again rather than just tracing it one time.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so we're going through the Quick Start course now. I'm going to go through it kind of quickly and mainly focus on if you have any questions here live. The course is recorded and in Calligraphy School, so you can actually go through it a little bit more slowly. But right here, we're just going to go through it pretty fast. So monoline and faux calligraphy is done with a regular pen. So I'm just using a regular pen here. And monoline letters are letters that just are drawn with a regular pen. There's no contrast between thick and thin. So if you want, you can trace over this. This is looking kind of like cursive, but also notice as I'm doing this, I'm lifting my pen between each letter. So to turn this into calligraphy, or to make it look like calligraphy, we're going to find the downstrokes. So anywhere your pen is coming down. So here I was going up, and then on this side I was coming down. So anywhere there's a downstroke, we're going to be adding shade or thickness. There's different ways to describe what we're doing here, or outlining the letters, or just making them heavier. And this step is to show this dashed line is where I'm thinking about adding a parallel line. So then if I were to actually do this, I would make the H, and then I would add a parallel line along the downstroke here. So this is just finding the downstroke. So here I'm hovering my pen over, just trying to figure out, okay, where are the downstrokes? And then, for example, on the H, we were coming down right here. So I added a shade right there. And then you would finish that for the whole word. And then to make it look more like it was drawn with a calligraphy pen, you can color in the letters. So again, the first step would be to write it in monoline, then add shading right here, and then color it in like this. Okay. So that is how you get the look of calligraphy with a regular pen. So if you do not have a brush pen yet and you only have a regular pen, you can actually still trace all the worksheets with a regular pen and still get a similar look. And this would actually be really helpful for you to understand exactly where the shades are. So for connecting, we kind of already talked about this, but letters are written separately, even though they look connected. So by contrast, if I were to write hello in cursive, it would look, my pen would not leave the page. But it does actually give it a different look. The letters are a little bit narrower and more closed in. Like if you see the difference between the loop sizes in the L and even in the E, it just gives it a different look. Okay, so that is the first page, is learning about monoline and faux calligraphy. And then page 2, we are going to start talking about the numbers and the arrows. So this is pretty self-explanatory. It's kind of like connect the dots. Is that what it is? Where you have a bunch of dots with numbers on it. But here you have the numbers and the arrows. So all you have to do is find the numbers in order and then see where to start and then follow the direction of the arrow. So the letter D is written in 2 strokes. The letter R, so we're going to start here and go 3, just trace, follow around. There's another number here, so I'm going to lift my pen. Lift your pen at every number. And for some of you, this is really going to be the hardest part, is just remembering to lift your pen. It's more obvious when the letters are separate, like you see here, where the letters are separate, so you know that you have to lift your pen after the E. Come over here, find the next number. Finish the oval, lift your pen, because there's another number. So again, it's obvious when the letters are not connected together, but then once the letters are connected together like this, you still need to lift your pen. And part of the reason for this is just to help your letters be more consistent. Okay, so I'm tracing over this, but I'm still lifting my pen, recalibrating my hand after every piece of every letter. And there's something that's really relaxing about this. Like, you're probably not doing calligraphy so that you can write faster. You're probably doing calligraphy so you can write beautifully. So slowing down is a big part of that. Okay, so after you write the letters in monoline, then that's where we go back in and add the shades. I'm not going to go through every letter here, but I'll just do on the D. If you have your monoline letters written already, then you go back in, add your shading. Again, if you don't have a brush pen yet, this is how you get the look of calligraphy. And then if you want, you can go back in and fill in those gaps. This is a little bit more time consuming. And if you are going to do this, then maybe make the gaps a little bit narrower so you don't have to spend so much time coloring it in. Or you can also color it in with like a marker or a different color, or make a pattern like stripes or dots or something. Like, be creative with it. Okay. Again, let me know if there are any questions. This is an example written with a brush pen, which is what we're going to talk about now. So on page 3, we have the faux calligraphy example, which we just did with a normal pen, and then brush calligraphy. So I'm going to trace over this right now with a brush pen, and then we're going to talk about how to actually use the brush pen and how to hold it. So when I press down on the pen, it automatically creates a thick line. So this is like doing the work for me instead of going back in and coloring it in. So it saves you a lot of time. It saves you like 3 steps, 2 steps. Notice how I'm still lifting my pen and I'm going slowly. Actually, right now, I'm almost going a little bit faster than I normally would, just because I'm conscious that I'm on video and I don't want it to take too long. But if nothing else from today's lesson, the thing I want you to remember is to go slow and lift your pen. I guess that's 2 things. So let's talk about how the brush pen works and how to hold it. And this is where I'm going to try to give some lefty tips as well. So when you come in the downward direction, you want to press on your pen. So right now I'm pushing down and then I'm moving in the downward direction. And these pens do this because they're flexible. I also want to show you, so some of you will be really heavy-handed and some of you will be light-handed. I tend to be a little bit more light-handed, so naturally, if I'm pressing down, it would be like maybe this thick. If you're really heavy-handed or if you're holding your pen at like a really steep angle, then you could get an even thicker line, and having a thicker line will give it a different look. It will give you more contrast between thick and thin, but it also depends on how you hold your pen and how hard you press. You don't have to press as hard as you possibly can. You just want to be able to get a thick line. Okay, so if you're left-handed, that might look something like this. You really have to focus here on the lefty part. So the direction that you're holding your pen is important. Okay, that's a good question. When doing calligraphy, what's the best way to keep your lines straight? So do you mean like making this line straight from here to here instead of making it wavy, or do you mean like keeping your letters straight on a baseline? And I can answer both. For drawing a straight line, it's actually a little bit harder than you would think to draw a straight line that doesn't curve at all. And I don't really know if there's an answer to that, but as far as keeping your lines straight on a baseline, because all these worksheets here are just really tracing, and also because they're in more of a modern style, it's less strict about keeping things straight. So if you're tracing it, then it's kind of already there for you. But if you want to do some freehand calligraphy, we do have some blank guidelines in the classroom. So a guide sheet, I have one right here. We have a few different options. We have some that are just like blank guidelines. We also have some that have a slant line in here, this diagonal line, and this helps keep your letters at a slant. Okay, so if you're struggling to get thick lines, there are a couple tips I want to give you. The first one is to make sure that your pen is going in the perpendicular direction to the stroke. And what I mean by that, maybe it'd be easier to see what not to do. If your pen is lined up with the stroke like this, even if I press really hard, I'm not going to get a very thick line. So if you turn your pen this way and press, you're going to get a thicker line. So I'm kind of resting the pen on like the side of my index finger here. If you normally hold your pen with the body of it like next to your thumb, I would recommend trying to rotate it this way and see if that helps. And then also, if you're holding it like super close to the top right here, it's going to be really hard to get a thick line. If you hold it farther back, just to show you like an extreme, if I hold it really far back, then I can get like a really thick line because it's angled more. You don't want to hold it that far back, somewhere in between, just a little bit, maybe slightly farther back than you normally would. I'm using blank sheets to learn individual letters, and the best thing is practice, practice, practice. Yes, absolutely. Um, and I think I saw, so your name was showing up as the fairy on my shoulder. I kind of remember seeing, did you post something in the community, um, like maybe yesterday about this? I remember seeing your comment. And if you do want more practice with letters, you can practice the alphabets that are in the classroom. Okay, so if you're left-handed, I know some lefties hold their pen differently. Another tip I want to give you is to rotate your paper. So if you're left-handed or if you're right-handed, like I'm right-handed and I usually rotate my paper this way to the left. The top of my paper goes to the left. So try that and see if that helps. If you're left-handed, you might do it the other way, or you might do it either way. I would recommend trying both. But if you're left-handed, I know some lefties hold their pen in weird angles. So I'm not going to be able to show every possible lefty grip. But if you do hold your pen kind of like this, then you might want to rotate your paper this way. Does that? Oh, okay, yes, Susan. Yes, I now that you say that, I definitely recognize your name. Yes. Okay. Does anyone have questions about? I don't want to keep talking about how to hold your pen if you don't have questions about that. So let me know if there's any other questions about that. Oh, okay. So if you're asking where to find the worksheets, if you go to the classroom and then you go to the classroom tab and then go to brush up your basics, it's the third course. And then in the more resources, there is one called guide sheets. Another tip in Calligraphy School, there's a search bar at the top, and if you type in guide sheets and then go to the classroom, you should be able to find it. The search feature is not like the best in the world, but sometimes it can help. Okay, so that's thick strokes. Now, thin strokes are in the upward direction. It's actually a little bit harder to get thin strokes than it is to get thick strokes, and your thin strokes might be a little bit more shaky. Like they might look something like this. I don't want you to think that you have to make the thinnest stroke in the entire world. If you press down a little bit on your pen, that might help it become more smooth. And it's not going to be, as long as you don't press down as hard as you're pressing for a thick stroke, then you're still going to get contrast. So let me know if you have any trouble getting thin strokes so I can give you some tips for that. The next step would be to alternate between thick and thin, and this will help you start to get more pressure control, and also to remember thin strokes are up, thick strokes are down. Also for the thick stroke, when you start at the top, instead of kind of like tapering into it like this, when you start at the top, put your pen down, pause for a second, and then move down. Put your pen down, pause, and then move down. And you can see, because these are real scanned in work using a Pentel brush pen. Also, I don't think I even mentioned that. I'm using a Pentel brush pen. The information for where to get these is in the course, the Quick Start course. You can see that there's some natural variation here, like these are not identical lines. So then the next step is to practice transitioning between thick and thin strokes. Again, we're following the arrows. So we're coming up with a thin line, and then we're coming up and over, and then now we're starting to come down. So we're going to add pressure. Then the hard part is coming back and releasing pressure to a thin line. Let me show you not on an example so you can see it. Up with a thin line, curve around and over, then start tapering into the thick stroke, and then come back up. Now this shape is actually pretty complicated. Oh, okay, Carrie, I'm glad that that was helpful. Um, if you want, you could also just practice just coming down and then pausing, coming up, over, and down, and then pausing. You can also come down and then transition back to up. Looks like a U shape. And then when you put it together, up, down, up. This is actually called a compound curve. All right, let's keep going here. So now whenever I sit down to do calligraphy, I usually do a quick warm up first. So with whatever brush pen I'm using, just to get my hand back into feeling like it can do calligraphy, I like to do a warm up. So I just do some downstrokes and some upstrokes, and then I usually do some back and forth. So these are the same things that the same shapes that we just made. And it does take a lot of practice to get the actual smooth transitions and smooth lines. So if yours does not look perfect like that, that's not really the goal. The goal is to make sure that when you're going up, it's thin, and when you're down, it's thick. Okay, so now I want you to try writing hello with the brush pen, and you can just go ahead and try this. Don't worry so much about it being perfect, but really just think about tracing it and trying to get the same areas thick and thin. Try to remember to lift your pen. Remember to go slowly. Also, remember that if you don't trace it perfectly, it's fine. It does not have to be traced perfectly. And hopefully, you can also enjoy this process. I know a lot of this is kind of repetitive, but sometimes just like hearing it in a slightly different way makes it stick. So here is the breakdown of what we just did. So when you just see the word and you trace it, then you can just kind of go for it. But if you are looking for a little bit more detail, here's what the actual breakdown is, where you're coming up, you're making the thin strokes, and then you're coming down, you're making the thick strokes. So all of these arrows here are showing the ups and the downs. So this up arrow, and then the down arrow, and then the up arrow. So really it's all just up, down, up, down. There is a little bit of side to side, like when you're coming over the top of a curve like this, you're technically going to the side. Those are also going to be thin because they're not coming down. Okay, so you can practice tracing with the arrows if that's a helpful cue to remind you ups and downs. Remember, again, go slowly. There's no rush. Then here we have an arrow every time that we're going to lift our pen. So in this example, there are arrows for every upstroke and downstroke. For this one, it's just everywhere that you lift your pen. So the first one is obvious. Okay, now there's another arrow right here, so I'm going to lift my pen. Finish this. Now I'm going to lift again because there's another arrow right here. Lift again, start here. Okay, so there are a lot of details to remember, but also once you get this into your muscle memory, like when I do this right now, I'm not really consciously thinking about it because I've done this so many times. As a reminder, we started doing this kind of calligraphy 10 years ago. So there's 10 years of muscle memory built in here. But even if you've only been doing it for a few days, it'll get easier every time you do it. It's just the repetition that will help. And if you are following along with the Quick Start course and you did on page 1, if you did write your before, you can write an after right here. You can try to freehand it. You can, if you have a light pad, you can also put your paper over or hold it up to a window to trace it. But hopefully you are seeing some progress here. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing with a different word. And I'm going to change to a different color pen for this. We're getting in some repetition here. It's kind of like for people that lift weights, it's all about like how many, you don't just lift a dumbbell one time and then get strong. You do it over and over. At least I think. I don't really lift weights, so I assume you have to lift a dumbbell more than once.
Yeah, I was wondering how you're speaking with such confidence on the topic of weightlifting.
So every time there's a number, I'm lifting my pen. The arrows are telling me what direction to go. I'm going to try tracing the word big with my left hand. For any lefties here, just so you can see an example. And while I'm doing this, let me know in the comments what questions you guys have. Really focusing here. So while you're writing letters, if you're finding that you're having trouble getting the thick and the thin lines, just go back to the page before this, or like to page whatever it was, 2 or 3, where it had those down strokes and upstrokes, and just go practice some of those just to get used to it. Okay. So the numbers and the arrows, and then there's a version just with the numbers. And then there's another version if you want to try it out without the numbers and the arrows. You can kind of test your memory and see if you can do it without actually having the numbers and the arrows reminding you where to lift your pen. So that's a good challenge. And again, that's for every worksheet that we have uploaded, like all the practice words pages, all the quotes. The first page has the numbers and arrows. The second page just has the arrows, and the third page doesn't have either. So we're really trying to get you to just do a lot of calligraphy and build up your muscle memory. So that was basically the lesson. The last 2 pages in this have 2 short quotes. So one of them is follow your heart, one of them is believe in yourself. And again, for both of these, we have 3 versions of it. We have the version with the numbers and the arrows, the version with just the arrows, and then the version with neither. I'm just going to trace this version right here so that you can see an example of tracing it without numbers and arrows. You do have to think a little bit more. So at this point, I'm going to lift my pen. Really just lift your pen kind of as often as you can, at least 1 time per letter. Some letters more than once. Now, some of these letters connect together. Let me see what we have. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to come up here. I was just looking at the suggestion for the numbers. So here we have the E, come up to the top of the V, lift your pen, and then come back down. So for some letter connections, like if I was writing this freehand, there are actually different ways you could connect. So like from E to V, you could technically do what I just did here. You could also stop at the bottom here and then lift your pen and then lift your pen again. So there's not just like one right way to do it, but these arrows are a good suggestion of when and where to lift.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If there's a letter connection that you're working on while you're tracing and it feels a little bit awkward, or you feel like you need to lift your hand in a different spot, you can absolutely do that. Like she said, it's a suggestion that we have on the page. But if something feels like you need to lift more frequently, then you can absolutely do that.
Okay, so last call for questions while we're here live. Any questions about what to do in calligraphy school, where to find anything, any questions about how to use the pen, any questions about what to do next, any questions about like if you just joined, where you should get started, we are going to stay on for a few more minutes and answer those questions. Also, because I brought out a large brush pen because I did see a few questions in the group about large brush pens. This is a Tombow dual brush pen. And this brush pen has a much larger brush tip. You can see that creates much thicker lines, and even the thin lines are pretty thick. So if you have a brush pen like this, there are a few things to know about it. Number one, they are much harder to control because they are so large and they're so flexible. And then number two, these are too big to use for these worksheets. Unless somehow you were able to like print it at a larger scale, these are going to be too big and they're going to be too frustrating. And then I do have two other pens I want to show you here that are other options of small tip brush pens. The first one is called a Tombow Fudenosuke. This is actually a green version. Usually they only come in. Usually most people use the black colored one, but they do also come in colors. These are firmer. Like the tip of it is a lot more firm. So you can actually get like much thinner lines much more easily. So if you're struggling with thin lines, this could be a pen to try. And then this Rytec one, which I had never even heard about until someone in Calligraphy School posted about it a few months ago. And I ordered some and I really like them. They're like kind of in between where they're a little bit more firm than the Pentels, but not quite as firm as the Tombow Fudenosuke. And we do have brush pen recommendations in the course. Okay, I'm going to go back to my camera. And let's check the comments one more time. Okay, so I haven't seen any other questions come through, so hopefully that means everyone is all set. But again, if at any time you want to, if you have a question, you can post it in the community. You can also send us a message. So in Calligraphy School, you'll see like a little message icon in the top that you can, if you have a question, you can send it there or you can post in the group. Okay, so I think that was it. Jillian, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
No, I guess just thank you to everyone who's here watching, if you're watching live or you're watching the replay. When we started or when we opened Calligraphy School a few months ago, we were just so excited to share our love of calligraphy with all of you. So it's great that you're here. We hope that you're loving it. I know at the beginning there can be some frustrations when you're just really getting started, but before long you'll be really enjoying calligraphy, just tracing it, practicing it, incorporating it into your journal or wherever you plan to use it. So thank you for being here. Hopefully you find Calligraphy School a welcoming place. And as Jordan said, if you have anything you need, any questions, feel free to reach out.
Yes, and there was one more question in the chat. Where's the website for the classroom? So if you go to school.com/calligraphy, and again, school has a K in it. That's just the name of the platform that we use. School.com/calligraphy will automatically take you to the community. And then across the top, you'll see tabs. One of them says classroom. You can click on that. Or you can go to school.com/calligraphy/classroom. And that's the link that I just put in the chat just now.
Yes, and that's the one that you could bookmark if you want to just have to do fewer clicks to get to the worksheets.
All right, everyone. Thank you for being here. This replay will be uploaded to the classroom, and we will talk to you guys later.
Everyone.